Good evening, friends. Welcome to this interactive webinar. Mr. Dubey is with us. There are few instructions. Request all the participants to put their audios on mute and also would request them to put their video feed also on off. This would help us with our guests uninterrupted lecture. After the lecture, we would also be taking some questions and queries from the participants on the subject. And I would request all those participants who would like to ask questions to put their questions in the chat box. The chat box can be accessed by me and Mr. Dubey, and we can take up questions from there and we will try to answer as many questions as we can. So before we start our lecture, let me just introduce the guest lecturer for today, Mr. Dubey. Mr. Dubey is one of the most noted, renowned, and sought after criminal lawyer in the country today. His career spans for more than 25 years. And since last 25 years, he's been advising clients on on almost all complex criminal important matters. Right from Tehelka Commission to CWG scam to coal scam, these are just few of the matters where Mr. Dubey has appeared and has advised clients. At present, I don't think there's hardly any big criminal matter where he's not being retained or his advice. Mr. Dubey has also been inducted in a team of advocates conducting an LCIA international arbitration in Paris. Friends, with so much experience at bar, Mr. Dubey has developed an envious reputation of being a great cross-examiner. Like from my personal experience, I can tell you when Mr. Dubey enters court, the fate of matter changes. I've seen witnesses getting nervous. I've seen testimonies getting demolished. And there are instances where Mr. Dubey appears and in half an hour or in an hour, the prosecution's case gets demolished. So this is what Mr. Dubey is. Some may call him magician, but for all of us young lawyers, we just look forward to him. We look up to him. So friends, with this kind of a background, this kind of experience, I don't think we can have anybody better than Mr. Dubey to educate us on the art of cross-examination, and especially for young lawyers as to how to go about it, how to prepare, how to conduct themselves in court. I think it will be very instructive for all of us to pick on Mr. Dubey's brain and his experiences for his last 25 years. So without much of an ado, I would welcome Mr. Dubey here, and I would request Mr. Dubey to take on and commence his lecture. Over to you, Mr. Dubey.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vivek Jain, and thank you so much to all my senior colleagues, chambermates, all the persons who are the part of this interaction section. Thank you so much. The topic which has been assigned to me today is the art of cross-examination, and everyone is aware of this topic. I'll just start how I started the cross-examination. I joined my profession in 1995 in the chamber of late Mr. K.K. Luthra, the father of Mr. Siddharth Luthra and Sita Luthra, both senior advocates. And I was doing one matter in Tisajari court. It was related to the Rent Act matter. There are so many provisions was there. The matter was going for more than last 15 years. So, being a young lawyer, I make a request to the court for the further adjournment as Mr. Luthra was on his way to the High Court. Witness was already there and the opposite party insisted for the cross-examination on that day itself. So I was directed by the court. I should inform Mr. Luthra, witness has come and he would not go without cross-examination. So I make request Mr. Luthra reach well within time in the court. Then immediately after entering the courtroom, he asked the question, Mr. Dubey, what is this case about? I just started giving some brief. Mr. Luthra started cross-examination of that witness. And this is the beauty of my senior late Mr. K.K. Luthra. He was so brilliant, so well prepared with the matter. He had read the matter 10 years ago. It was not like that he had some briefing in the evening or prior to that. So he started the cross-examination. His cross-examination went for more than 1.5 hours. So it was my great surprise. I asked the question, sir, how you keep all these facts in your memory? And he demolished the case itself. So he advised me, कि beta, this is the first rule. If you are going to cross-examine the witness, you have to be thorough with the file. I asked the question, sir, how I should be thorough with the file? He just advised me, beta, I'm just giving you an advice. You first stage for preparation of your matter, you should be slow reader of the file. You are not required to be fast reader, because the moment you will be the slow reader, you will memorize each and every fact in your memory, and you can use this memory at any time, and you don't require to read the file. So this was the first lesson to me. After that, Mr. Luthra died in May 1997. So I have not a very long association with him. Then I was started my practice in Kisijari. I was fond of cross-examination because the cross-examination was my passion every time. So I kept watching the matter in the different courts. So there was a court of the special NDPS court, that's a special court, and the court was being presided by late Sri S.K. Kaushik. He was a special judge NDPS. So he saw me 2-3 days. Then he asked the question, वकील साहब आपका कोई मैटर है क्या? Every day you are coming to the court and you are not participating in any proceeding. So I just mentioned, sir, I am basically learning the cross examination. Then he asked you where you are working with, who you are associated with. I gave the details of who I am associated with. So he made a proposal that I am appointing you amicus curiae in the matter where the maximum punishment in NDPS Act is 3 years. So he appointed me the amicus in some NDPS matter, because those days it was the discretion of the court to appoint the amicus curiae, and these days the amicus curiae are being appointed from the list provided by the legal aid committee of the concerned district. So I got a call from the court of Mr. S.K. Kaushik. You have to cross-examine the witness. The witness has already read. It was my first experience. I never cross-examined the witness pertaining to NDPS or any witness in my entire career. So I asked a question. Some question, friend of mine who was doing so many matters in the related to the NDPS. So he advised me to just go and cross-examine on the point of section 42, 50, 55, 57, 67. I was not familiar with all these sections. So those days I was maintaining Bajaj Chetak, second-hand Bajaj Chetak, and I became the pillion rider. One of my friends was driving from Patiala House to Kisijari Court. I started reading the sections. After reading the section, when I entered into the court, I started the cross-examination. The cross-examination was not as per the satisfaction of the court. So Mr. Kaushik advised me, Mr. Dubey, I'm just giving you some tricks, and you follow these tricks. There are 17, 18 questions which can be asked every time from all the witnesses. So he started asking the question on my behalf. The first day he cross-examined. The second day he says, you will start the cross-examination. So I examined. He said, you have made 3-4 wrong questions you have formulated. That was not the proper way for the cross-examination. You amend yourself. After a week time, then I started my own with the assistance of the presiding officer itself. So Mr. Kaushik helped me a lot in the cross-examination. Then he started giving me the matters where the minimum punishment is 10 years. So this is how my journey for the cross-examination started. Now, friends, we are coming back to our topic. In our topic, my first suggestion, as per my experience, my first suggestion to the lawyer, that you prepare your brief. How you prepare your brief? So for preparation of the brief, there is a provision under Section 173. When the charge sheet is filed, it is incumbent duty of the prosecuting agency to supply each and every document to the accused person. So you just start the scrutiny of the documents. In the charge sheet, you will find list of the documents and the list of the witnesses. So to go through the list of documents, compare the list of the documents, list of the witnesses, interpret all these things, and you complete your scrutiny of the document. If there is any deficiency in the document, you have the right under Section 207 to move the application before the concerned court for the direction to supply of the deficient document. Friends, there is some instances where witness has been examined, witness under 161 CRPC, witness was put with a certain document, he was confronted with the document, his answer was taken during the course of his statement under 161, so the document was not supplied. The other circumstance, there is a search and seizure memo. The investigating agency has had basically seized 8 to 10 documents, but they choose not to file all the documents. They file only 2 to 3 documents. And then the case is, sir, this is not the reliable document. We are not going obliged to file this document because it is the stand of the prosecuting agency whether we will file this document or not. In that eventuality, you again move the application under 207 CRPC for the direction by the court for the supplied document. And we have the judgment in this aspect. It's a start with the VK Sasikala, the Supreme Court judgment. We have the Ashutosh Barma, CBI, Delhi High Court judgment, and other judgment, also the Supreme Court judgment also there. So you can complete your brief with the help of this charge sheet. Once you will start reading the 161 statement and the scrutiny of the documents, then you will come to the fact which witness is related to which stage of the investigation. Because in every investigation there are so many stages and there are so many witnesses related to so many stages. So you categorize which witnesses are related to which incident. So first you put that kind of the one kind of the witness in one group, second kind of the witness in the second group, and then correlate the statement of the witnesses with the document which has been filed. The moment you will start reading the 161, the scrutiny of the document, the charge sheet, then I hope you will be aware of the fact. But you don't limit your case only to the 173 report and other report which has been filed by the prosecuting agency. You also try to collect all the application which has been filed from the very inception of the case before the court of law, like the remand application, your application for the superdari, their reply, the bail application, and reply to the bail application. These all documents could help you as per the circumstances of the case. I'm just giving you one example of this remand application. In a case where the accused were arrested, let us say on 8th February, and the remand application was moved. In the remand application, it was mentioned that the custodial interrogation of the accused persons are required to confront them with to obtain their specimen voice. So remand was given. Second application for the remand was moved, and that application, the same stand was taken. Bail application, the same stand was taken by the CBI. Ultimately, bail got dismissed. The accused person approached the High Court. The stand was the same stand. So, friends, you remember the date of the arrest, that is the 8th February. But there is a special team in the CBI who are assigned the work to intercept the conversation of the people. That's called the intercepted call. That unit is called a special unit. So the special unit, what they do, they intercept the call. Then on the request of the investigating wing, that is like anti-corruption 1, anti-corruption 2, so they will make the request to the special unit to supply the document, like all the CDs, So on the basis of their request, the CD would be taken, the CPD would be burned, and as per the practice, they would prepare the two CDs, one in the sealed condition would be sent for the forensic examination to rule out the tampering of the document. The other CD for the purpose of investigation. So in that case, where the remand application was filed, the accused person was arrested on 8th February. The taking over the document, the CD, was on 1st April. So 8th February, they got arrested. The handing over the document by the CBI AC SSL unit team was given to the concerned investigating agency on 1st April after a very long time. So the question would be where they got the CD at the time of the remand to confront the accused persons with the conversation, so-called conversation. When the person concerned from the ACU entered into the witness box, I asked the question with the gentleman, Mr. X, have you supplied this document to the investigating team prior to 1st April? He says no. Did you give access to any of the officers of the investigating team to enter into the private room where there was server and the logger? No. Did you have any correspondence? No. Did you compromise with the document with them? No. So have you supplied the CD? No. This was the one aspect. The second aspect, when IO appeared, the IO was confronted with the document, the remand application. He said, this is the remand application. This is the remand application. Yes, this is the remand application. You have signed this remand application? Yes, I have signed the remand application. And it is correct, you have mentioned that you needed the custody of the accused person for the confrontation with the conversation. Yes, I needed. So, is it correct that you first time the CBI received the remand, the intercepted call on the 1st April? Yes. So, where you got the CD on 8th February or 9th February for the purpose of confrontation? So, IO was not having any answer. He was completely blank. He started making some excuses. So, this and the entire case was based on this electronic and tape recorded conversation. So you can demolish the case. And the case was demolished on the basis of the remand application. It was not demolished on the basis of the charges they had filed. So you can develop the case on the basis of the so many documents. You cannot limit. So in cross-examination, you can use any kind of the documents which are not the part of the charges. You can go beyond the documents which have been supplied to you at the time of the charge sheet. The second stage, my friends, are the charge. There is a procedure for framing of the charge. So you must be clear at the time of the cross examination what was the allegation mentioned in the charge. Nowadays, there is a trend. The judges are passing very detailed order on the charge. They say 50 pages, 100 pages, 150 pages. And then at the time of the framing of the charge, what they are saying, keep pursuant to the order on charge, this charge is framed, and this order will be the part of the charge. So the charge, basically, the charge would be the 150 pages order also, because the order on charge will merge with the charge. So it is very difficult for the defense to find out what are the charges are, because everybody knows the order on charge is the submission by both the parties and on the legal aspect of the factual aspect, and this is the finding of the court. The finding of the court cannot be the charge. There is a specific provision of charge, and you must be knowing what is the charges, what is the crux of the offense. Once you are knowing all these facts, then you are clear in your mind what is the case, what is the charges. You have already made the preparation, so you have already made the grouping of the witnesses. So by all these methods, you will be the master of the fact. For the purpose of the cross-examination, the examiner must be the master of the fact. Every fact should be on his fingertips. He should not forget anything. He should prepare the detailed notes on each and every aspect. So this is all these things which I have explained, that is pertaining to how you become the master of the fact for the purpose of the cross-examination. Now the second aspect, friends, this is the provisions. there are three types of the witnesses who will depose in the, and this, I'm so sorry, I should mention, in criminal proceeding, there is a process, a provision for the framing of the charge, but in civil proceeding, there is a procedure for the framing of the issues, and the issues will be framed on the basis of the pleading of the parties. And criminal cases, there are framing of the charge, issuance of the notice as per the summary trial, summons trial, or the warrant trial cases. So every type of the trials, they have the separate proceeding. So after the framing of the charge, then you go for the evidence. The evidence, there would, as per the law, there would be the three types of witnesses to be examined. The first type of the witness would be, in the civil case, the plaintiff or the petitioner witness. In criminal case, the prosecution witness. In the defense side, there's a defendant witness, respondent witness, or the defendant, defense, and the respondent witnesses. The third category is the court witness. There is a provision under section 311 CRPC. The court has the ample power to call any person who the court thinks he is aware of the fact to call as a court witness and can examine the witness. So the court also has the power to examine the witness, that is called the court witness. So there are three types of the witnesses. But there is a four types of also witnesses, which are not nowhere mentioned in the entire code. This is as per the practice. The practice is the formal witness. We have given the nomenclature of the formal witness for the our suitability. So who will be the formal witness? The formal witness would be like duty officer of the police station. So what he does, he has recorded the FIR, he has come with the original register with the FIR, and then he is going to prove the FIR. So he is the formal witness. At this juncture, I would like to introduce the provision, certain provision that is in Delhi, because Delhi was a part of the earlier Delhi, Punjab, Haryana High Court and the Himachal High Court, they all are the part of the same High Court. And that time there was a police rule that is called the Punjab Police Rule. Punjab Police Rule, Volume 3 is very crucial for the lawyer who are interested in the cross-examination, because Punjab Police Rule gives a detailed procedure how the proceeding would be conducted by the police officers. In Punjab Police Rule, there is a provision to maintain the register with the police station. There is a register called A, register called B, register C. There are so many registers. So what I'm saying, what is register A, what is register B? Let me give some brief idea about register A, register B. Register A, register B, if there is information to the police station that there is a commission of the crime, that would be registered in the register A. If there is a miscellaneous work like the arrival, departure from the police station, submission, deposit of the case material, all these things, that would be maintained in the register B. So if the information is entered in the register, there will be the numeral number. Like you must have seen in some cases DD number 13A. In Delhi, the terminology is DD number, that is the Delhi diary number. In other states, it's called GD number, general diary number. So if there is a noting of DD number 13A, meaning thereby that this information was registered at the serial number 13 in register A. If entry number is 13B, meaning thereby that this information has been registered at serial number 13 register B. You find in so many cases, despite their having the information for the commission of the cognizable offences, either they have left the alphabet A or B in the DD, or they have mentioned register B. So why they have mentioned register B or they have left either A or B? There is a reason, because at that relevant time, there was no space in the DD register. So these all are manipulated subsequently. You can prove by way of summoning of the document. This is the one aspect. The second aspect I'm trying to convey to you all, like the formal witness. The generally when the formal witness like the duty officer comes to the court, even the judges advise him, Mr. Counsel, he is the formal witness. Why you are going to cross-examine in detail? No, he is not the formal witness. It is the duty officer who is the more crucial, more important witness in any case. Why so? Because the duty, as per the Punjab police rule, duty officer is supposed to sit at the entry of the police station, and he's supposed to make the entry of each and every activity in the police station. There is a provision in the Punjab police rule. If the accused has been arrested and he's been brought to the police station, there must be the entry in the DD register. You never find there is an entry in the DD. There is a DD entry in the register. If you are seeking something, I'm coming to the police station. It is duty of the concerned person to make the DD entry in the police station, then go to the Malkhana to deposit the state property. There is also provision in the Punjab police rule that the accused would be interrogated in the interrogation room. If he is being taken to the interrogation room, there must be the DD entry. At what time the accused was taken from the lockup room for his interrogation. These all are mentioned in the DD entry. So why it is important? Suppose there is a disclosure statement of the accused. So you don't have any document to break the case, demolish the case of the prosecuting agency. This disclosure statement was not recorded. Only simply my signature was taken on this disclosure statement. The only document you have, that is the DD entry. So when the duty officer enters into the witness box, you ask all these questions. Are you aware of the Punjab police rule? Does Punjab police rule prescribe this provision, this provision, this provision, this provision? So you prepare your base from the very first witness, that is the duty officer, who is coming from the police station. On the basis of that fact, you can cross-examine the police witnesses regarding all the stages of the investigation. So my humble advice to all of you: you read the Punjab police rule, you read the High Court rules, because the High Court rules are also there, and the High Court rules have given the procedure how to conduct all the investigations regarding police remand and everything. So these all would help by the time of the cross-examination. If you touch the procedure, even the police officer would be nervous at the time of their deposition. So you should be master of the Punjab police rule. PPR is very important document for the person who is interested in conducting the cross-examination. This is the very important. The second thing is the case diary. The case diary is defined under section 172 CRPC. The case diary is meant for the purpose of writing all the activities pertaining to the investigation. As per the Punjab police rule or CBI manual, the investigating officer is supposed to write when he started the investigation, what he did, what time he concluded, when he started recording the disclosure statement of the accused person, when it was concluded. You hardly find the time in any disclosure statement the investigating officer has given. So on the basis of the Punjab police rule, you can ask this question to the person concerned at what time he started, what time he was taken from the lockup. It is nowhere mentioned. So 172 is meant only for the investigation purpose, to refresh the memory of the witnesses and for the perusal of the court if required. I have one example related with this Punjab case diary. I was conducting a case related to the counterfeit currency note. I put a question to the IO and I made a request to the IO, please go through your case diary. IO was not very far from me, and the case diary was easily visible. So suddenly I noticed that the 2-3 blank documents which have been put in the case diary, signed by the accused and the 2 witnesses. I made a request to the court, Your Honor, kindly peruse the case diary. The court was very hesitant, but ultimately court agreed to peruse the case diary. In the case diary, the court found there are 3 documents which are the blank documents. So I made a on the record, and the court should give the finding on all these things. So this fact came, and we proved the case that all the documents were prepared by the police, and these are fabricated, and accused was compelled to put his signature. It is not a voluntary, and all this activity which has been mentioned in the documents has not been conducted by the police in the fair manner. This is the example number 2. Now, there is a certain provision in the CRPC, like I've already mentioned 161. There is also a provision under 164 CRPC, the statement before the ministerial court. One thing I would like to mention, 161 and 162 are not the evidence at all. As per the law laid down in this country, the statement under 161 and 162 are meant only for the purpose of the contradiction. The person who has made the statement under 161 or 162 cannot travel beyond 161 and 162. If he travels beyond 161 a statement and 164 a statement, you have the provision under section 145 Indian Evidence Act, read with section 162 of CRPC. You can confront the witness and you can prove that the witness is improving his testimony, which was not stated at the earlier occasion. And these all the statements are being made first time before the court. And as per the ruling passed by the superior courts, if the statement is made first time before the court of law, that statement would not be considered by the court. So this is 145. Now the section is 137. 137 Indian Evidence Act talks about the cross-examination. So what is the cross-examination? Cross-examination is the examination of the witness by the adverse party. 138 defines examination in chief, cross-examination, and the re-examination. Re-examination basically for the purpose of the explanation. Then there are 2 more sections. That is 141. That is the leading question. Is defined the leading question. 141 Indian Evidence Act and 142 the provision for the putting the leading question. Why I am mentioning this leading question? Because there is a reason behind all these things. When the examination in chief is recorded, the prosecuting agency or the person who is leading the examination in chief cannot put the leading question. If he wants to put the leading question, he has to take the leave of the court. He has to satisfy the court why the leading question is being put. If the court satisfies that, then court can permit him to ask that particular leading question. Even the court permit, you can raise your objection. So the leading question is not permissible to be asked at the time of the recording of the examination in chief. The second is the electronic record. In the electronic record also, you can raise the objection. If the electronic record is not supported with the certificate under 65B or the Banker's Book Evidence Act, as per the situation, you can raise the objection regarding the admissibility of the document. The third objection would be the author of the document. If the witness who is being examined is not the author of the document, he is not aware of the document, he has come only to identify the witness of the document, you can raise the objection. If this document cannot be exhibited because he is not the author of the document, he has no knowledge of the document, you put your objection. In electronic evidence, you must raise your objection at the very first instance, because the latest judgment of the Supreme Court says if you have failed to raise the objection at the time of the recording of the examination in chief, you cannot raise the objection subsequently at the appellate state or during the course of your argument. So you are stopped from raising the objection. Third thing is that if there is a disclosure statement, the moment the disclosure statement comes, if the witness says that the accused disclosed this fact, immediately you raise your objection, because this would fall under the category of the hearsay evidence. So hearsay evidence is not admissible. So you raise your objection. These are the tips for raising the objection at the time of the cross-examination, the mode of the proof. These all are the kind of the raising the objection. These are, you must be prepared to raise the objection, but don't raise the objection for the sake of the objection to irritate the court or the prosecuting agency. Don't interrupt unnecessarily for showing to your client that you are doing the good job. Whenever it's required, you do raise the objection and your objection will be taken. If the court is not inclined, make the polite request to the court, sir, it is not going to make any change if you take on record, this is my objection. So don't hesitate in raising the objection. Once you will miss this bus, you cannot again enter in that bus. So this is the examination in chief. The cross examination, you will find number of the type of the witnesses in the cross examination, like honest, truthful witnesses, fully untruthful witnesses, fully honest witnesses, partially honest witness, partially dishonest witness, timid witnesses, over talking witnesses, cunning witnesses, clever witnesses, intelligent witnesses. So you will have to cross-examine these kind of the witnesses, expert witnesses. So there are so many type of the witnesses you are supposed to cross-examine at the time of the cross-examination. So my advice is, at the time of the recording of the examination in chief of the witness, you minutely observe the dilemma of the witness. He in what category of the witnesses he is falling in. So be attentive at the time of the examination chief, whether he is aware of the entire fact, whether there is any hesitation, whether it's talkative, whether he is interested, he is impatient. These all are the tests to be observed at the time of the examination chief, so that you can easily familiar with the witness and will cross-examine the witnesses. At the time of the cross-examination, you have to play so many tricks. I'll just give you one example. In a matter where the witness was supposed to say something, and I wanted to bring on the record, witness had the conversation with the crux of the conversation. He was very hesitant. So what I did, I had the CDR of one person in some other case. It was not related to this case. I had already given the CDR to one of my juniors. When I put the question, I immediately instructed my assisting counsel, please take out that CDR. So in the CDR when he was talking about this gentleman. So he come under the pressure, and my junior immediately took out the CDR, but the CDR was not pertaining to that particular case. So he immediately admitted the fact, yes, I have talked to him, and this was the crux of the conversation. So you can play these kinds of the tricks also at the time of the cross-examination of the witness. You will also find the witnesses who are more interested in giving the explanation. They are very talkative witness. If you have got the very intelligent witness, what he will do, he will ask a question. He will give so many explanations. So how will you start the cross-examination? What kind of the questions should be asked? That is fall under the category of do. Because do's and don'ts, this is very important at the time of the cross-examination. The question must be clear, unambiguous. Number one. Number two, there must be clarity in the witness, in the question. Number three, the question should be very small question, not the lengthy question. Four, you don't ask the question which answer is no. Don't touch that type of question. So fourth, if the document has been admitted during the course of the admission and denial, that is admission and denial in civil law, and admission and denial in the criminal law under section 294, don't give the opportunity to the witness to give the explanation once the document has been admitted. Don't ask any question where you are expecting the detailed explanation would come. So these are the tips for the purpose of the cross-examination. But you don't open the door to give the opportunity to the witness to improve his case during the course of your cross-examination. Because you have already put the question, so witness has got the opportunity and witness is going far beyond your question. That will create the problem to you. So don't ask this type of the question. Don't ask the question which you planning to argue before the court of law. Don't disclose your argument. Don't disclose your decisions to the witness. And don't start arguing with the witness. If the question is put to the witness and the court asks the question, Mr. Counsel, tell me how these questions are relevant. So make a polite request to the court, sir, let the witness be permitted to go outside. I would like to convince your honor, satisfy your honor on this aspect. make the request, let the witness go outside, then you disclose your defense to the court that this is the purpose of the putting this question. If the court is satisfied, then you ask this question. If court is not satisfied, but you are fully convinced this question is very relevant, then you put the question and make the polite request to the court, if your honor is not inclined, your honor may kindly disallow my question. So that tomorrow you can argue before the court of law, I was not given the opportunity to ask those questions, and this question was disallowed by the presiding officer of the court. But don't fight with the court. Don't fight with the witness. You'll find so many kinds of the witnesses. The witnesses are also very important. They will also play with you. So always be comfortable with the witness. If the witness is very polite, you be polite. Witness is rough, be rough with the witness. If witness is clever, be clever with the witness. You bring the witness at the frequency, on a very particular frequency. If the frequency matches, you can ask any type of the question and the witness will give the answer as per your desire. So whenever you are cross-examining the witness, you lead the witness in a particular direction. You must be knowing you are going in this particular direction. This is your goal, and this is what you are going to achieve through the witness. So you take the witness as per your comfort in a particular direction to put the particular fact. Second thing I would like to mention here, these days there is a trend of suggestion. Suggestion is very old thing, but the trend is now been changed. What is been changed these days? The cross-examiner cross-examine the witness, and in the last, when they are at the verge of the conclusion of the cross-examination, then they say to the court, sir, I now have started giving the cross-examination. I don't follow this practice, because whenever you cross-examine the witness, you prepare the issue on what issue you are going to cross-examine the witness. If you have started one issue, at the conclusion of the issue, immediately you give the cross-examination. That would help you at the time of the argument. Not only it will help you, it will help the opposite side, it will help the judge, and the judge will immediately say, yes, this witness is cross-examining this particular issue, and there is a suggestion. So the cross-examiner has already proved this issue and demolished this issue. So always try to give the suggestion at the conclusion of the particular issue. Second thing, don't give unnecessary suggestion, because suggestion is your admission. It is coming from your mouth. So if you have given the suggestion, tomorrow you cannot say, no, I'm not going to follow this kind of the suggestion, this kind of the case. So you have admitted certain facts. So be very particular while giving the suggestion. Third thing, during the cross-examination, you will find the witness has given you all the answer, and you were able to demolish the case of the prosecution. In that eventuality, don't give the ceremonial suggestion to the witness that you are deposing falsely. Because one side, you are taking the benefit of the testimony of the witness. Other side, you are going to give the suggestion that you are deposing falsely. So you yourself declaring the witness as an untrustworthy witness. So don't do that. Don't give that kind of the suggestion. The purpose of the cross-examination, keep in mind always, the purpose of the cross-examination is to bring the truth before the court concerned. And the cross-examination is the golden stage of the entire proceeding. If the lawyer has not conducted the cross-examination, really he has not enjoyed his practice. So I would request all of you, you don't miss the opportunity to cross-examine the witness. So this is the basic tip for the cross-examination. Now, I'm giving one example that was related to Tahalka Commission. I was very young, and those days it was somewhere in 2000. So there was some conversation with some witness, and we were representing the Tahalka people. They had conducted the sting operation. So our motive was only to prove that there is no tampering in our tapes. So there was a tape was being played, and there was parallelly the transcript was being shown to the witness. So in one tape, what I found, there was a background sound of the dog barking. So immediately the question was put to the witness: Is it correct there is a dog in your house? Yes. Can you recognize the voice of your dog? He said yes. And when is it correct when the dog was barking, you were conversing with Mr. X? Yes. And these were your conversation? He said yes. Then immediately we put the suggestion, sir, I'm suggesting that these all are of your conversation. He says, yes, this is my suggestion. I will admit it. So point X to X, the entire conversation was admitted. So our duty was only to prove that the whatever the sting operation was done, there was no tampering in the tape recorder or the material. So this was the only goal. This was the only goal, and we achieved. So this kind of the cross examination, you have to play with the code. So these are the examples. The third example I will give, like in civil law, I would like to suggest one more thing. You must go the entire pleading. Why entire pleading? Because at the time of the cross examination in chief, you can raise the objection. This is coming beyond the pleading. You can easily raise the objection. At the time of the cross examination, you can confront the witness. Have you mentioned the plaintiff? Have you mentioned this fact in your pleading? He will say yes. Then you confront. It is not fine there. So this is the improvement. So you have to demolish the case of the witness. So for demolishing the case of the witnesses, you have to place so many tricks. You don't confine yourself on one aspect. Now the expert witness. I'm touching the expert witness. And one thing I would like, before going to the expert witnesses, I would like to, if you go to the sequence of the sections in the Indian Evidence Act, you will find how it is incorporated. The starting is the relevancy, then admissibility of the evidence, then you will find the relevance, the proof of the document, then the primary and secondary evidence, then the examination, cross-examination, the re-examination, what kind of question could you ask, how you will impeach the witness. So there are so many things. So this is the sequence of the. So you must read the Indian Evidence Act before, if you want to become a good cross-examiner. The Indian Evidence Act is very important to read, and section 161, 162, 164 CRPC. Never forget 145. I would also advise, if you want to read, you read one judgment, that is the Tehsildar Singh versus State of UP, somewhere in 1959. So Tehsildar Singh versus State of UP will help you how the statement would be hit under section 162. You'll confront the witness under section 145, Indian Evidence Act. Now the expert evidence. Expert evidence, don't touch the expert. Don't touch the expert without having the knowledge on that particular field. If doctor is coming, postmortem doctor is coming, you must consult a doctor before going to cross-examine the doctor. Or you read the Modi medical jurisprudence or whatever the medical jurisprudence is available with you. You consult the doctor. If you are going to examine the handwriting expert, you read the literature on how to examine the handwriting expert. If the person is coming for the forensic science laboratory, on the tape recorded conversation, you read all the literature and the judgment, Ram Singh versus Colonel Ram Singh. So you read the judgment. Third thing, you don't limit your cross-examination only to demolishing the fact. You also try to demolish the case on the point of the ingredients of that particular offense. Because there is a charge in the particular section. So you read the ingredient of you try to break the ingredient of the particular offense. Then you will in better position to argue the matter. Sir, these are the answers. These ingredients are lacking in this particular section. So this case under this section is not made out. So these are the basic things you can do. I think Jain, Mr. Jain, Mr. Vivek Jain. I
Yes,
think
sir.
this is.
So thank you, sir, for this beautiful exposition on the art of cross-examination. It was very instructive, very insightful, and I hope all young lawyers and participants have taken notes and would be benefited from your suggestions and advices. I personally really enjoyed the incidents and tidbits you've given of your court experiences. We really liked it. I think now we throw it open for participants to ask questions. And I think, sir, we have a few questions already. So may I just read these questions to you, sir? And if possible, could you take some queries and questions and try to answer that?
I'll try my best.
So the first question is a very interesting question. The question says that there is a very renowned and intelligent prosecutor in Bombay who tutors almost every line of his witness, and he takes examination in chief in parts. How to stop it?
See, so far as the tutoring of the witness is concerned, now the law has been changed. The law says that even during the course of the exam, recording of the examination in chief, the witness can refresh his memory. And if you have the evidence that the witness is being tutored, if you have any evidence to just bring this fact before the court of law, you ask this question at this time you are there in the office of the public prosecutor. So what you can do, if you are dead sure that yes, there is a tutoring and he has made the person at the concerned place, you just try to obtain the call location of the gentleman. If you have the call location of the gentleman, you can easily say at this time you are in this area and this area is situated where the office of the public prosecutor is situated, you are sitting with him. So these kind of the things you can say, but the tutoring, it is very difficult to demolish that if the witness is a tutor. You can only cross-examine the witness, and during the cross-examination, you can demolish that. You can establish the witness is tutored witness.
Thank you, sir. Before I take another question, I would request all the participants to switch off their audio and also videos. I think it will make quality of our audio output better. Now, sir, we have a second question from Vaibhav, sir. He he asks, in what circumstances can the case diary be seen by a defense witness? If never, then can it be mandatory for court to see the same? What are the checks and balances to secure accused right?
Case diary at any stage cannot be seen by the defense witness or the defense counsel. Law will settle on this aspect. At the inception, I have already mentioned the case diary is meant only for the prosecuting agency and for the purpose of perusal of the court. So if you have any doubt on the case diary, you make the request to the court. You ask the question to the IO, and the IO is avoiding, the concerned person is avoiding the answer. Then you make the request to the court to let him refresh his memory for the case diary. Let him say whatever he wants to say from the case diary, but there is no law which permits the defense witness or defense counsel to peruse the case diary.
Thank you, sir. So there is another question which is coming up now. So Shubham Lokhande, he asked, sir, how to balance between not giving a chance to witness to explain the case and also getting the contradictory statement out of him. So I would repeat the question again.
I got your question. See, recently I was cross-examining a witness. He was a very intelligent witness. Earlier he was an accused, then he's turned as an approver in the matter. The witness was so smart, he was volunteering after every answer. If you put a small question, he will give the volunteer in 1 page and 2 pages. So the best way to balance the volunteer statement explanation to the witness, the speed of your question should be very fast. You don't give the gap even to the witness or to the court, because under section 165 Indian Evidence Act, the court has the power to ask any court question, and you cannot cross-examine on the question put by the court without the leave of the court. So don't give the space. Your speed should be very fast. Number one. Number two, Vivek, I have missed one point. It was very relevant at the time when I was just interacting with you. I don't believe in the question answer form of the questionnaire. I would not encourage the people. You prepare the question answer and go to the questionnaire to cross examine the witness, because if you are going with the question answer to cross examine the witness, your knowledge, your thinking, your IQ is limited to the question. If the answer is coming which is uncomfortable to you, you are not able to ask the question and you will miss the bus. So try to develop ex tempore cross examination. You prepare your note, make the issues as I have said, and you start creating the question at the dais itself at the time of the cross examination of the witness. So what I did when I was cross examining that approver, I was not giving the space. I put the question, the steno, before the steno ends the typing, I immediately asked the second question, the third question, the fourth question. So he was not getting any space to make the volunteer statement. And it's a very interesting, I'll just share what the witness said. I was at the serial number 2 to cross-examine the witness. He was exhaustively cross-examined by one of the defense counsel. At the time of the lunch break, what did he say? Sir, अगर आज जो है डेफर होता है तो मिस्टर दुबे क्रॉस करने आएंगे, इनके क्रॉस के लिए सर कल का डेट ले लेना पीपी से. देन पीपी आस्क्ड मैं क्यों कल का डेट ले लूं, क्योंकि सर मेरे को तो कल इनको जब ये क्रॉस करेंगे मुझे दूध पी कर आना होगा और बादाम खाकर आना होगा, पूरी तैयारी के साथ आना होगा. तो मैंने उनसे कहा कि देखो साहब, आपको दूध पी कर आना नहीं चाहिए, मैं बहुत ऑर्थोडॉक्स आदमी हूँ, बहुत कंजर्वेटिव आदमी हूँ, दूध पीकर जाना अशुभ होता है. तो आप अपने घर वाली को बोल देना कि आपको अखरोट खिला दे और दूध घी खिलाए, जिससे आपकी मेमोरी बढ़ेगी. इन एनी केस मैं 15 मिनट में आपको ब्रेक कर दूंगा. तो आई पुट द प्रेशर ऑन हिम कि मैं आपको डिमोलिश कर दूंगा. सो ही वाज अंडर लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर. ही वाज नॉट गेटिंग एनी स्पेस टू मेक द वॉलंटियर स्टेटमेंट, एंड आई demolished his case within 15 minutes. The one aspect, I demolished his case under 15 minutes. So you have to be very aggressive also, familiar with the witness, and you don't, again my answer would be, don't give the space to the witness to think, or don't give the opportunity to the court to ask the court question for any clarification. Number 3, if you have achieved the goal, you have got the favorable answer, you will stop there. Don't exceed further, because I just give an example. There was a case where the driver logbook was being examined. In the logbook, there is a time was mentioned at this time the accused was there like 10 to 12 p.m. He was there in particular hotel. When the witness came, I just give the suggestion कि I am putting a suggestion कि टाइम जो आपने लिखा है वो टाइम आपने सीबीआई के कहने पे लिखा है और सीबीआई के ऑफिस में लिखा है. उसने कहा सर एक सही है. मेरे साईओ साहब ने कहा कि टाइम तुम रजिस्टर में बाद में लिखो. तो मैंने वहां पर इसी समय मैंने उस विटनेस को वहीं पर रोक दिया कि भाई माय पर्पस इज अचीव एंड आई अप्रूव देयर इज अ फोर्जरी इन द गवर्नमेंट डॉक्यूमेंट. नेक्स्ट.
So there's another question which is coming up now. The question is, can an application under section 91 CRPC be moved at a stage of cross-examination from production of documents from the witness?
Of course, even 91 can be moved before the framing of charge. There is a judgment of Nitya Dharmadhikari of the Honorable Supreme Court, Justice Uday Lalit's judgment. And it says that if the police is in the position of the document, you can move the application to section 91 CRPC, and that document would be considered at the time of the charge. Even those you have the power, because the 191 says at any stage, if the documents are relevant necessary for the just decision of the case, you convince the court, and there are so many judgments, you can maintain your application under section 91. And during the cross-examination, you can use any kind of the document.
So another question we have is whether complainant's counsel does not have any right to cross-examine witnesses. If PP has missed certain important question, what should the counsel of complainant do?
To write the question, give to the PP. PP would be obliged. PP will not have any choice except to ask the question. You write the question, or if the PP is not agreeing, then you submit the questionnaire to the court and just get the instruction from the court, or otherwise you discuss with the PP why you are not asking this question. The PP will advise you why this question, whether this question are relevant or not, or is it damaging. Because the complainant questions generally are the biased person. They are representing is the affected party. So there would be some bias. The PP is the person who would be the neutral person, as we have been taught, but generally they are not.
Thank you, sir. So there's another question. I think it's a relevant question. The question is, what are the broad differences in cross-examination in civil and criminal case? In what circumstances suggestions are to be given in civil case?
You can give the suggestion only on the basis of the pleading you have mentioned. You cannot go beyond the pleading in the civil cases. And one more thing, you don't give the suggestion if you don't have the defense. Third thing I would also like to add here, you cannot take the defense first time in your 313 statement. If you are going to take a defense on the 313, so you have to put the question to the witness at the prior to recording of your 313.
So another question, what is the remedy when witness either dies or is become unapproachable after recording a part of their cross-examination, especially when the cross-examination was going in your favor? What would happen to the cross-examination already recorded?
So unfortunately, even it is in your favor, but you will not get the opportunity to cross-examine. The cross-examination is still not concluded. So his testimony won't be considered by the court.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Vivek, carry on.
So another question, it says, let's say there are multiple contradictions between statement under 164 and the examination chief. Now, instead of confronting with every contradiction, is it permissible to give a broad suggestion on the line that it is wrong to suggest so and so forth, and then later point out all contradictions during arguments?
No, you have to put each and every statement at the time of the confrontation. You put every, because what the purpose of the confrontation is getting the explanation from the witness, why you have made the false statement, or why you have contradicted yourself, why you improved. So you have to give the opportunity to the witness to give the explanation. So my advice would be, each and every improved fact or contradictory fact must be put before to the witness.
I think, sir, we would have a lot of questions. I think they are pouring in like heavy rain. So what I would suggest is we'll put your email ID on the chat, and all the participants who have questions from sir can directly.
We can extend for another 5 minutes if you are really interested in questions. I don't have any problem.
Okay, sir. I'll just send another question. Another question, sir, which we have is, can the prosecution be permitted to put leading questions to its own witness without seeking them to be declared hostile?
Yes, I have already mentioned. With the leave of the court, first the prosecutor has to convince satisfy the court, and the prosecutor can put the leading question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this interactive session, and we have learned a lot. I think a lot of people have taken a lot of notes from your experiences and advice. Cross-examination is a skill which can't be learned in a day, sir. It's not like preparing an argument a day before. It's a thing which you learn along the lines of your career. And thank you, sir. And we would like to welcome you again for another interactive session. I don't think this one session was enough for giving all the details and all do's and don'ts of cross-examination. And maybe in the future, we would ask you again to come and throw light on specific areas of criminal trial and cross-examination. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you all the participants. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for your patience. Thank you so much.